we'll just go live and we'll explain to people what's going on, right? So
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
if anybody tunes in, they'll see what the heck is going
What the
on.
heck's going
We're
on, man?
doing it again. We're doing it again, my friend.
We are go.
Um,
We
let's
are
see
go for liftoff.
if I can make sure it's going. Let me go into here and double check. Yep,
No
it looks like it's
problemo.
going. Okay, good. All
We're on the
right.
interwebs. Awesome.
It's not showing. Oh, because I'm in the wrong spot. Okay, let's see here. So this is. Ah, there we go. There we go.
So
Yep.
for
Okay,
people,
we are live in there. All right.
perfect.
So, for anyone wondering what the heck is going on, we had a little time zone problem here. And the time
We
zone
did.
problem is that we sprung ahead and you did not. Yet. You do, right? You do spring ahead at
Certainly
some
do.
point.
Yeah, yeah, we do, but at different times, I believe, just to
Yeah.
make life even more complicated with
Like a week
daylight
later
saving.
or
It's always
something, right?
yeah,
Don't
that's
you go
right.
like a week later or
I
something?
don't remember now because it's all become automatic. The only thing that doesn't switch over is my cooker and my microwave. So I've forgotten the day when it happens because
Well,
everything else is automatic now with the
maybe
modern
maybe
wonders
this
of
will.
modern tech.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying it's the one technology. They know what time it is better than we do.
Maybe this will allow Eric to join us because they did tell him that um, he should have his power back on by 2, and
Oh, okay.
that would be right now. So I don't know if he can join us or not. We'll see. Um, in the meantime, I just recorded an episode. Hey everyone, I'm back. I just recorded 447 and thought I'd just do it solo. So I ended up with about a 35-minute episode, but I think it would be nice to extend it. And then um, you've got a an essential app, so we'll use your essential app instead of the one I just did.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan. All right. And then for those who I see, I don't know, people may not even know that we're live now. I had a couple people tune in the first time, but now, all right. So here we go. I was kind of winging it because and trying to rewrite my notes in my head as I went because I wrote many of the
Oh
notes with the
no.
assumption that one or both of you would be in this. So yeah, all right, we'll see what happens. I don't think it'll be a super long. Oh, real quick, your tips.
Yes.
Um, your number
Right.
one, your
Yes.
number one with image splitter. Let's cut that one.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. But also your, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, which is grand perspective.
Oh yeah.
Let's cut that. I mean, unless you want to make grand perspective itself your tip. See, both of those assume that the person has those apps.
Yes.
And
I see. Yes.
what we're trying to do is provide tips on things that everybody has. You know, everybody has all these things. So if
In that case, let's cut Grand's perspective definitely. Um, the other one, yeah, that's just a nicety really. It's not really an app as such because it's a built-in setting to change the wallpaper for anyone who uses virtual desktops.
you
So
know what, all right, cool. So here's what we'll do is one of my tips would work really, really well with that.
oh, okay.
So after I give my tip, which some folks have heard already, after I give my tip, um, I'll throw it over to you to talk about that for the wallpaper. How about that?
Perfect, perfect.
All
Oh,
right.
well, what a tie-in. Perfect.
Yep, that'll tie in perfectly with that. Um, and so let's see. Activity monitor is good. Um, the incognito mode, that's good. Um, web browser permissions. Preview. Okay. Yep, we've talked about that. Archive folder. Okay. Cool. All
Cool.
right. Well, I will throw it to you for the first tip then, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth. And I think at this point we'll probably presume that Eric is not joining us.
Cool. Okay.
All right. So then we will get started. And now I'll have all new notes here. Let's see. We're 6 minutes in. Okay. Take two. Take two. 6 minutes and 20 seconds in. Okay. Awesome. All right. Are you ready? And maybe I'll remember to do this. I created a new scene. Oh, someone is watching. Awesome. I'm glad they joined us. They're probably like, I thought this ended. I thought the show ended. No, we're
Yeah,
back.
start it
We're
again.
back. We're back. If you're just joining us, we had a time zone kerfuffle. And with the time change here in the States, old Darren couldn't keep up with us.
No,
We're a whole hour ahead of you now.
that's it.
So anyway, so I created a new scene that I intend to show during the wrap up, and that's this. See?
Ooh, very fancy.
Yeah, fancy, fancy. But anyway, all right. So we're starting over. Those joining us,
Cool.
we're starting over. And it should be better. It should be better.
Well, yeah. Who
All
knows?
right. Who knows? Here we go. So we're going to start in, because I have to keep gabbing. It's now a minute later. All right, here we go. Ready, Darren? All right. In 3, 2, 1. It's for Mac Guys Only, episode number 447 for March 15th, 2025. Tipping the Mac Fantastic. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me to share a few awesome Mac tips with everyone is Darren Davies. Howdy, Darren. How are you?
Howdy.
Howdy. That's it. Howdy. Okay. And remember, if you're joining us live, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat room too. So if you have any questions or comments as we move along, be sure to drop them in the chat room and we'll try to address it as we move along. Hey, Darren, one of the things I love about the Mac is digging into the nooks and crannies. The deep crevasses of the operating system and discovering something new. New ways of doing things, or in my case, discovering old ways of doing things, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But maybe, discovering new ways of doing things that are new to me, and then sharing those tips and tricks with others. So we're not out here to cover any one thing in depth, but to maybe highlight some of our favorite little tidbits that make the Mac work better for us. So, if everyone is ready, why don't we get started with you, Darren? What is your first tip for Mac users this week?
Right. Okay. My first tip isn't a tip, really. It's advice, really. It's about RAM. So
Okay.
it's to do with not panicking. Um, so the tip is don't panic.
Don't panic. Keep a towel. Oh, the tip is to keep a towel with you wherever you go.
Keep a
That's the tip.
towel very, very by
Yes.
hand, indeed.
Yes.
Yes, close by hand. Yes, I have noticed online some people um, misunderstanding how memory management works and being quite aghast when they look into Activity Monitor, a lovely built-in app on the Mac, which when you have a look at how RAM is behaving, can seem quite alarming if you don't know what some of it means. So I have seen people look at the cache value when they only have Safari and one tab open, and they freak out slightly, thinking,
Yeah,
"Where's all
yeah,
my RAM gone?"
that's right.
and I'm I'm not doing very much. Why is it? What's happening? But they're sort of misunderstanding how modern RAM allocation works and memory management principles. They're very different to what they used to be. If you have some pedigree in the computing world, you know how RAM used to get allocated back in the day. It's very, very different now.
Yeah.
So what the Mac is doing, and most modern operating systems, although Mac does a really good job of this too, is to pre-allocate RAM and pre-cache content and so on. So it looks like it's using a lot, but it's not really, because most of that is being cycled and changed every few seconds, or every second almost, or possibly even more regularly than that. But if you run Activity Monitor and look at your RAM, and it says 6 gig has been cached for you, and you haven't even run an application yet, there's nothing to worry about. That's just how modern memory management works. So yes, don't panic.
Don't panic is the tip. Is the tip this week. And real quick side note here, Darren. Um, because you switched over to the Mac for camera, right? Um, Click your little icon in the menu bar and turn off reactions. Because I noticed your uh, thumbs down. You did a thumbs down on yourself as you were giving your tip.
Of course, I shall turn off reactions. Yes,
Yeah.
they're turned
Okay.
off now.
Cool. That
Cool.
that would be the other tip if you're going. This is
Oh,
not an
that's a
official tip.
bonus tip. Oh
Bonus
yeah,
tip.
bonus tip.
Bonus tip. If you're going into a Zoom or Teams or FaceTime or any meeting, and you don't want the Mac to automatically insert things like this on you, um,
Oh, who could not love the
based
balloons?
based on the jet or this, maybe you don't want these showing up
Oh,
automatically. Now, I jest. I have these set up as buttons here, so I can just press them. But if you don't want the Mac to to automatically throw lasers behind you as you're in your meeting, up in your menu bar, you'll see the little green icon to indicate that the app you're in is using your camera. Click that little icon, and then you can do things like turn on or off portrait, which blurs out your background.
oh, let's do that. I'll do
Studio
as you
Light,
say. Yeah.
I like Studio Light. I think Studio Light makes a really nice image. Um, so I do like that. But then reactions. So you'll probably want to turn off reactions. Now you can turn them on, right? Wait, is that going to work? I
You
don't know if
can
that's going to work.
indeed.
You can turn them on. Yeah, there we go. You can turn them on. But if you have them off and you want to inject a reaction into your meeting, you just click the little right arrow next to the word reactions, and then you can choose from any in the list. Thumbs up, thumbs down, balloons, rain clouds, which I know Darren likes, hearts, fireworks. What is this one? I don't even know what this one. What is this one? Oh, firework. That's
Oh,
fireworks.
that's the
What is this one?
fireworks. Yeah,
Oh, so this must be lasers then. Oh yeah,
that's the
that's
laser
lasers.
show. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, so
And then graffiti.
if you don't want reactions to automatically appear, turn that off. And then if you want to manually inject one, just click that little right arrow, go back into the menu, click the little right arrow, and then you can choose the one that you want.
Perfect.
And then one of the other options in there is background. Background is a way to change to a still image, or to, like there, you can change to a still image, or you can change to a faded background or whatever. That is actually, it works pretty well, I think. It does a good, I mean, look how busy my background was, right? Look how busy that is. And yet the Max processing does a really good job of keying that out. I'm pretty impressed with how well that works. But you know, the one I turn on is Studio Light. I like Studio Light a lot, but that would be the bonus tip here. Ready for St. Patrick's Day? That would be the bonus tip. This episode is go up to the little camera icon, the green camera icon in your menu bar, and then turn on or off. And you'll also see that there are options in there for your microphone as well. But in terms of reactions, that's how you get a handle on those.
Perfect.
All right. Well, I guess that could have been my first tip, Darren. Would you like that to be my first tip and we go back to you again? Or
Okay, I
should I
could do,
move
yeah.
on to my actual first tip? What do you think?
Let's go with. Oh yes, but I'll grab the next one then, and then we can flip flop. Yeah, cool.
Sounds good.
Yes. So my next one is really to do with passwords. So
Mm,
nowadays, not everyone is adopting it yet, but we have the new passkeys that we can start
yeah.
to investigate. And one of my tips was going to be, if you haven't already tried a passkey, there's quite a nice safe option to log into your iCloud.com account using a passkey, because Apple presents it very, very nicely. So the tip was, if you want to try it, go to iCloud.com and click on login with passkey instead. And what that does is essentially the nirvana of not needing to use a password. Well, eventually all websites might be made this way, but at the moment it's only a select few. So passkeys are great though. So the way they work is they ask a trusted device that already knows you are you, so you can prove your identity with your own trusted device. The device knows you are you, so when your device looks at a QR code presented on the website, the device trusts you are you and knows you are you, so it can generate a token to pass to the website to say, I agree that this person is the real Darren, in which case it will log in to your iCloud account as you without having to type the password in, which can be quite a bit more secure in quite a few ways. So, for instance, say if you are on an unknown computer and you don't know what's going on there, what's been installed. It could be infected with some interesting thing. There could be a little keylogger in there lurking away,
So in other
waiting to
words, you're saying it
catch
could be
your
running
key
Windows.
presses.
It could be running Windows. Yeah.
I never said such a thing. It could be running a random operating system that may have a keylogger installed. So by using the passkey, you bypass any key presses to enter your password. You're not actually entering your password. What's a trusted device, i.e., your phone, is generating a token to say it believes you are you, and allows you to log in without proving that fact with a known password. So it's a trusted login, a different way of logging into websites. And if you give that a go on iCloud.com, that'll be a nice introduction to just the concept of using a passkey, and it will generate an add a passkey to your passwords app on your on iCloud itself and on your phone. And in future, you'll be able to log in very easily. And the other tip is about when using computers that aren't known to you, to make sure you use incognito mode on Chrome, or private browsing mode as we know it in Safari, so that when you do log into your services, nothing is saved locally to their web cache. It's just a session just for you at that time. So yeah, it's a trusted computer thing.
I think that idea, if you want to play around with passkeys, I think that idea of going to iCloud.com or Apple.com and signing into your account that way
Yeah,
too
yeah.
is a really good one. That is a trusted site, but it's also a site that we're all familiar with, and probably one, since so much of our life is wrapped up within iCloud, probably
Mm.
one that's a good one to put a passkey on if you can.
Yeah, exactly.
At the
Your
very
first
least, two
passkey, yes.
factor, right? I mean, make sure you
Yeah,
have two factor. I do know some folks who still to this day don't have two factor enabled on their Apple accounts. So yeah, definitely enable two factor if you can.
yeah.
You may have a reason to not, but enable it if you can. You really should. And then if you want to play with passkeys, that's a great way to do it. And modern password keepers, One Password and Strongbox and others also recognize and allow you to use passkeys with them as well.
Exactly, yes. It's a world standard now. Well, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. They don't all yet,
not
but
yet.
most of the better ones do. Bitwarden does, I believe. I don't use Bitwarden
Oh,
regularly. I believe Bitwarden does.
Bitwarden
Yeah.
does, yes, definitely, yeah.
Strongbox does. One Password does. Most of your major password keeping apps do recognize and allow you to sync passkeys. So, yeah, definitely. iCloud.com is a great place to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, my first official tip, I know we just had the tip about the camera reactions for the camera, and that'll be my first official tip, I guess. So this will be my second tip, is a little bit of a simple one, but it has to do with the widgets that you might have running on your Mac, and in particular, the stocks widget. Now, I'm
Oh,
not a player of the stock market. I don't do a whole lot with it. I don't invest in stocks personally. I just haven't. And that's probably because I'm still kicking myself when Apple stock was trading around $6 a share back in the mid 90s and I didn't buy any. But, as it looked to us, Apple was not in great shape right then. And it might not have been a great investment. But then they did the smart thing of bringing Mr. Jobs back, and
the rest
there
is
you go.
history.
And the rest is history. And I did not make that investment. Gosh darn it. But
Oh,
anyway,
gosh darn it.
uh, it is fun. It is fun to kind of follow different stocks just to kind of see how they're doing and where they might be in the market. And there's a couple I stick in the stocks widget just for funsies, really. One of them is Apple. Well, for the longest time, the widget would show this really nice graph of how the stock was doing. A
Yeah.
little it's not a bar graph, but a little, just a little up and
A
down graph.
line graph.
A
Yeah,
line
yeah.
graph, line graph. That's the word I was.
That's the
Thanks,
one.
Darren. Uh,
And it
um,
was green if it was going well, and red if it is not going well.
and red if it was not. And these days, a lot of them are red. But
Quite a lot of them
the
red now.
but the line graph would show in there, and then I think I noticed with the installation of Sequoia that on some of my Macs, and this was the interesting thing, on some of my Macs, the little line graph disappeared and it was just numbers. And on other Macs, the line graph would still be there. And for the
Ooh,
longest time, I thought it was
how
because of
bizarre.
the new feature where you could show iOS widgets. Now you can turn that on and show the widgets from iOS. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that's it. Maybe I have iOS widgets enabled and they're different or something. And I turned it off and it seemed to help on one, but then it didn't help on another. And I couldn't figure out why that was. Well, it turns out that with most widgets, and the stock widget is one of them, there are options behind the scenes. You can edit the widget. You can change options on
Yeah,
it to make it
yeah.
work differently for you. Um, so, like I said, even though I'm not someone to play the stock market, I like to see that rough graph of how things are doing. Uh, and since it seemed to disappear, I was getting frustrated because on some Macs it showed, some Macs it didn't, and the numbers don't mean anything to me if I'm being honest. I like to see the graph. It's going up, it's
Mm.
going down. I'm a simple person that way. Well, the other change that Apple made and I think this was with Sequoia, is they enabled the news automatically within the stocks widget. So if you followed the Apple Business News or wanted to follow the Apple Business News, you would find that it automatically appeared within the widget. And I think by default after hours. So not during trading hours, but after hours, it would show up in there. And folks did not like that.
Ah.
So I was on a little bit of a mini quest to figure out why on some Macs I had the line graph and why I had numbers. And I found the answer. The answer lies in the ability to edit that widget. And to edit a widget, you pull them up, open up your notification center or locate it on your desktop or wherever you have your widgets on your Mac. Uh, Pull up that widget, right click it, and choose Edit. Now, in my case, I have the watch list widget. That's the one I'm running. It's not a single stock widget. It's what they call the watch list, and it kind of shows the few that I have listed in there. So mine says Edit Watch List, and when I choose Edit Watch List, a couple options pop up here, and one of the
Yeah.
options is to show stories. Wow. I
Wow.
can set
Who
that
knew that
to
existed?
never. You can set it to never. Now, you can also set it to in off hours or you can set it to always. So if you do like to see the business stories, just set
Oh,
it to
of
always.
course.
Otherwise, set it to never. And then the other option in there is oh, hey, Eric just joined us. We'll get you
Yep.
in just a second, Eric. Um,
Cool.
uh, and then the other option in there is to show the watch list name. And I found that by setting show stories to never and watch list name off, it would bring back the good old line graphs that I liked so much. So
Wow.
that is
Genius.
that is my tip for the stocks widget, but you'll also find that the same tip works for many of the other widgets. So for example, the world clock, which would have been really handy just a little while ago,
It
Darren,
would have been handy, wouldn't it? Yeah.
yeah, the world clock widget, if you right click that and choose edit world clock, you have the option to reorder the clocks. You know, I like to add clocks in there for London and for Cupertino and, you know, I think I often put Denver in there because they're on a weird little time zone of their own. They're on mountain time. So they're not 2 hours behind, but 1 hour behind, you know, that sort of thing. And
Wow.
sometimes it's helpful to put Phoenix in there or some of the others where they don't change time. Um, Especially
Wow. That's
if you
complicated.
regularly, you know, if you regularly speak with folks who are
Yeah.
in those time zones, it's kind of nice to have the world clock going. Well, you can reorder those and put the ones that are most important to you at the top of the list or down at the bottom. So if a widget isn't quite working the way that you want it to, give it a try. Right click it, choose edit, and see what kind of options it gives you to make that widget work better for you. So that would be my, I guess that would be my second tip of the episode. Now, with that
Excellent.
said, we are going to take a little break here and bring Eric into the call because he's able to join us after all, which is great. So let me pull you up here, Eric. And we'd like to welcome to the show. Oh, you're not there. Where are you? All right, let me do
Am
that
I?
again. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Boom. All
Oh,
right,
there I
There he
am.
is.
there you are. Now I'm going to center you a little bit on there. Okay, now we'll do that again. Because
Okay,
you know it's live and this really matters for the audio show. But
it
and that
does.
and now we would like to. Oh, you sound very hollow, Eric.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, so it's just been a great day of crap happening because my microphone, the little USB micro USB thing got stuck in there. It broke off,
Oh no.
and so I'm not able to use my normal microphone. So I'm using my headphones. So is it really bad? It's the only thing I
Well,
got.
we figured out the issue with Darren. Darren was using his headset mic and it sounded hollow, and he switched to the Mac mic and now it's working. But now at least it's just one of you, so that's good.
Well,
All right.
I'm wondering, should I switch to the studio display? Would that be better? You
I
think,
don't know.
or
Try it. Try it.
Oh,
Let's
yeah,
see what
that'd probably
happens.
yeah,
work better. Yeah, yeah.
see if I can do that.
Oh, that's
Oh,
already
that's
sounds
better.
better.
Wow, that is
Yeah,
better.
I haven't actually done anything. It's
Oh, you haven't done
in
anything
the
yet.
It did sound better though for a second, didn't it, Darren?
It did. It did sound
Yeah.
better for a second.
okay. Let's see,
Oh,
studio
three of
display.
us. Look at that.
Yeah,
We're
there
all
we
three
go.
on there. Yeah.
Studio display. So does that sound better?
It
You can't hear me.
sounds.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
go
so.
on, go
Yeah.
on a little bit more. Let's see what.
Okay, talking. I'm talking. Testing
Mary
one,
had a
two, three.
little
Yeah, I think
chicken.
that sounds a little bit better, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound a little bit better, Darren? I think it does.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Probably not that much better, but
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Gosh.
I think it is better than the headphones. Mine do the same actually. Yeah.
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 Okay. Well, then, all right. So now we'll continue. All right. Here we go. Break. This is, by the way, Eric, this is the complete second recording. So when neither of
Oh,
you were there at 1 o'clock, neither of you were there at 1, I decided to just record the show by myself. And then,
it just started.
Darren popped in and we're like, oh, the time change. That's right.
Yeah, we don't. I never thought
Oh,
of that.
So we got messed up with the time
oh, yeah,
change. Yeah. And now, yeah.
yeah.
Now you sound like you're in a
That's
room
right.
again. Now you sound like you're in a room
Now,
again.
now I'm sounding hollow again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. You know,
Why
let
did
me
we
just try
go?
one other one.
I would say go to the, maybe
Headset
just go with
again.
the headset and just deal with it.
This. Okay,
Well,
so
yeah,
this
it's a bit
is
up
the.
and down. Yeah.
Okay, so this one is the webcam mic. Is this better? Can you hear me?
Webcam mic.
Yeah. Now we
I
can hear
think
you,
so. Yeah.
but you're not moving.
Oh no! All right,
He's
so
frozen.
let's.
He's frozen.
Yeah. All right, let's just go back to the. Yeah.
This one. Okay. Now I'm still not moving. What the heck? Okay.
Technical difficulties.
I know. What is going on? All right. Let's do this. Oh, you know what? Okay. Let's try this here again. I think maybe. I don't know. For some reason, when I tried to use the webcam mic, it said, "Oh, you can't use that." Okay, so now I switched. Did I switch back? No. Link is not going to work. So you've got me on this.
What if you switch to your? Oh, what's that?
You're live
now?
again.
Yeah, you're live
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, it's I'm using the studio display camera now instead of my normal.
Actually,
webcam.
that looks better, honestly.
Does
Yeah,
it?
that is
Oh,
better.
good. Okay. All right. So, and I've got the headset audio. So there.
All right, there you go. All right,
We have a lot of editing to do.
Yeah.
I just cut
poor
all
Mike.
that out. All right, here we
Yeah.
go. So now we're going to get back to recording at about 32 or 33. All right, 33 minutes. Awesome. All right. And now we'd like to welcome to the show Eric Erickson. Hey, Eric. I'm glad you could join
Hey,
us.
Yes, I'm glad I could too finally. So yeah, sorry I missed out on the first part, and hi Darren to you as well. So
Hi there.
looks everything looks good. Everything looks. I hope I didn't miss your cool tip finder tip. So
Oh, not yet. We'll all
Okay.
have to determine how cool that one is. But my understanding, Eric, is that you have a tip or two to share, but you had said that it was going to be a longer tip. So,
yeah,
where would you like to inject that within the episode? Would you like to do it after we do a couple ourselves, or?
yeah. I could just do that and put it in afterwards. I do have one shorter one, finder based tip. That I could throw in there too. So,
Well, why don't
Yeah.
we start with that then? So we're going to
okay.
let Eric give his first tip. Now that he's joined us late, we're going to let Eric share his first tip for Mac users. What is that tip,
Yeah.
Eric?
That tip is, and like I said, it's a finder tip, and it's something that has been around since the classic Mac Classic days, and that is the list view. And I don't think you use that view, Mike. At least I don't think you did. But anyway,
I don't.
and I didn't either, and I still tend to use the icon view. However, a friend of mine this was back in the 90s actually, and he had a PowerBook and a laptop, and I think I was using it or I don't know, somehow it got into discussion. And I'm like, oh, you use the list view, and he goes, yeah. He goes, because when you have a 9-inch screen, or I forget what the screen size was then, um, he goes, you tend to need as much, cram as much as you can in this smaller real estate. I'm like, oh,
That's
that
right.
that makes sense. And so then I kind of got used to using it a little bit. And the other thing is, Windows, it's called the details view, which is kind of
Hmm.
a little bit more accurate because you can, the other thing that's nice with the list views, you can see a lot of information about the file. You've got you've kind of got like the get info, some of the get info stuff in the columns to the right of it. So that's another really nice thing about the list view. But the big thing that I wanted to say was just for seeing what's inside of folders and copying stuff from one folder to another, the list view can be very handy because you can, let's say, if you've got uh, a folder full of other folders, and you can select all of the folders at once, and then hit, I believe it's Command Option Command, and then the right arrow, and it will expand out all the contents of all the folders that you selected all the way down to the last subfolder.
Oh
So
boy.
you can easily see what's in that folder or folders. And furthermore, if you let's say you've got something in folder B that's 3 subfolders down, and you want to copy it to folder A, you can easily drag that, from folder B subfolder 3 to folder A. Just, where in icon view, that would
Yeah.
you obviously could do that with opening windows and everything, but you could do this all within one window. And you could obviously use the spring-loaded folders feature, which
That's what
I
I was going to
love,
say. Yeah.
and I use it quite a bit. But even in that particular example, that would be quite a reach. I use it a lot of times where I'll drag it. I'll drag the file and I'll go over like the back button, and it'll open up the previous folder,
Oh,
and
that's cool.
that actually works pretty slick too. But the list view, if people haven't tried it, it's actually worth checking out,
Yeah.
especially if you do have a bunch of files and stuff that you want to just check out quickly without having to open this up, open this up, and open this up. It's or you've got files that you want to move. It's actually really slick, and as well just to see the size or last modified date or created date, all that stuff. So it's definitely a view that is worth checking out. So it's probably not much of a tip, but if people aren't used to using it, it's very handy.
What is your preferred way of shifting to the list view?
Oh, I usually just click the little icon in the toolbar.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
The
I like to,
Yeah,
I thought
yeah,
you might mention the, what do they call it? It's like a column view. I
That's
think
the
they
one
call
I
it a
use.
gallery
Yeah,
view.
I use the
yeah,
gallery view myself. Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
really, I don't,
I
I
love
guess
the
I don't
column view.
understand that view. I do get list view. I use that fairly frequently, but I haven't quite figured out how I'd use that column view personally.
yeah. I don't either. I don't use the column view either. And I know they've obviously kept it around. Well, it definitely in the days of the old iPod, that was a column view. Is
Yeah,
you would
true.
Yeah,
go
yeah,
from one,
effectively, yeah, yeah.
and so I kind of always thought that was maybe why it got into the Mac too. But yeah, no, I don't really use that much either.
Well, I will say the issue I have with list view is typically the one where I'm trying to create a folder. When I'm trying to create a folder, I have difficulty finding a spot within that list view to right click and create a new folder.
It can be a bit tricky.
That's my problem.
Yeah,
Now, why I can't just press Shift Command N, I don't know. That's just not how my brain works. I should remember
yeah,
Shift
yeah.
Command N, and I should remember that creates a new folder. But do I?
Or you could
No.
click on, or you could click on File, New Folder, or New Finder window.
Sure, absolutely I
Yeah.
could. But do I? No. I want
Click
to
the file
right
menus.
click and create a folder. And the only view that I found where right clicking and creating new folder works well is
It's icon.
icon view. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
No,
Or
really
column
it.
view.
Or
Does it work well in column view? I don't know. Does it? Yeah, I guess it
Yeah,
would.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
it
can,
does. It does
you
work
can,
well because
yeah, exactly. You can write, yeah,
there's empty space. There's empty space, and that's what you need.
indeed, yeah.
In order to
You need
right
some
right,
empty
click and create a
space.
folder, you have to have some empty space within which to click, and that's why
Yep,
list view doesn't work, because it often thinks I want to interact with that file, not create a new folder. So
right,
that's
right.
where I run into.
Yeah,
But I do use list view fairly frequently. I don't ever use the column view, and I don't use the gallery view, but I do use list. Switch to it from time to time. Yeah.
yeah,
It,
and that's kind of me too. I generally always use the icon view for the most part, but use the list view when I've got a bunch of stuff. And I do use the keyboard shortcuts, so I haven't run into that what you were talking about. But that would totally be a bummer. That would be an issue. Uh, trying to create a new folder in that situation. And I don't use gallery view either very
yeah.
much either. Like,
I don't use that. Here's a bonus tip. Bonus tip to Eric's tip. This is how we're going to wrap up Eric's tip, and then we'll go over to Darren. So here's why I do use list view. And I don't know how many folks know this. You probably know this because you switch between them all the time. But if you like the items within your folder to be in alphabetical order, which I do, and you're in icon view, and then you switch to list view because you need to find the most recent item in that folder, if in list view you switch to change the sort order so that the most recent is at the top, interact with that file, and then go back to icon view, it remembers that your icon view is alphabetical and list view was by date, which I
that's
think
slick.
is very, very slick. And I think that's a great tip, because
Yeah,
you're not changing around the order of the icons in icon view. You're only changing the order of the files while in list view. And
yeah,
that's when I use it the most. When I want to find a document I just created, I go to list view, sort it by most recent at top, interact with it, and then go back to icon view. So there you go.
yeah. That's actually a really good tip.
Yeah.
I tend to stay in the icon view and then resort it, and I don't mind that they've got like I'm looking at my movies folder and it says today, previous 7 days, February,
Mm,
and I actually have kind of gotten used to using that, but that's a really good tip
yeah.
though. To
Yeah.
switch over to list.
Yeah. Well, Darren, what is your next tip for everyone today?
Wow, excellent. My next tip is to do with security and
Oh,
Safari especially. So the tip is to look into an area that hardly anyone ever goes. It's deep recesses of Safari. So if you click in settings in Safari, there is a tab there that says websites, and that lists all of the websites you've previously given permission for various things.
hmm.
You may have someone I know has fallen afoul of this. They did grant permissions. Actually, I know two people that have fallen afoul of this particular issue. That they granted a nefarious website permission to show notifications,
Oh,
and that
I hate
website
those.
Yeah,
decided to pretend to scare you into thinking you have a virus infection
Yep.
by using the website notification
yeah,
list to show a system notification to make it look like it came from the system when it didn't, warning you that you are infected and you needed to ring someone to help you disinfect your computer for a fee,
mm,
Yeah.
an exorbitant fee, I should imagine.
Always around
um,
$300. It's there seems
it's
to
always
be
around 300. Yeah, that's it.
there
You've got the
must be
special on
something.
299.
Yeah, there must be something in the credit card system where $300 above that raises
That's
a
it.
flag. Yeah.
Doesn't trigger anything. That's it. Exactly. Yeah. And just to go with that, there's another one which is remote control. So you can grant a website user, and if you do this on the wrong website, you can be granting others permission to remote control your machine, which wouldn't be
yeah,
good. So looking through that list, to double check that every website listed there and every permission you've granted for all the items like your webcam and your microphones and so on has been, you still want to remain active, because if you granted permission to someone and forgot you did it, they may have permanent access to your microphone from that point onwards. So you wouldn't want that. So it's just a security thing to review everything you've got in that list to see whether the websites listed in the in there for permissions are ones you expect to be there and that you want to be there. If not, just remove them, or you could leave the entry there, but you can specifically set it to deny. So deny the access to that type of item through that web page, and that will deny that person from being able to remote control your machine without you knowing, or trying to scare you with scareware virus infections that aren't really viruses. So yes, it's a security thing to go through and review what's in that list.
Absolutely. And some browsers, many browsers, and by many I mean Safari and Firefox, are generally pretty good about letting you know when a website is asking for those kind of permissions. But have you found also, Darren, that a certain web browser that comes from a company that starts with G is really, really bad about letting you know that this is happening? I have had numerous clients get these fake pop-ups about, virus alerts and all this stuff when they're using Chrome. And there does not seem to be any indication to them that the website asked for these permissions. And yet there they are. They've given it to them. So my tip with Chrome is to just turn off the ability for websites to ask for these notification permissions. And
good point.
Just don't get them. Don't get them.
That's one thing you should turn on. If you turn that setting on as well within Safari to say don't allow notifications to be added on request, then
and you can still do it on a per site basis.
Oh, you can still choose to do it. Yeah,
you just turn it off globally so that it can't happen without your permission.
And be very careful when a pop-up does appear on a website to look to see what you're actually approving or what you're adding a permission for. The trouble is, many nefarious websites will pretend, so they'll give you a pop-up and say it's for something, but it's what you're agreeing to is not for that thing that's popping up. So it can be fraught with problems, and the only way of checking is going through that list in the websites tab in settings, just to make sure what you've given permission for is something you want to have given permission for, and you've not been tricked into it. You can be easily tricked into giving permission when you shouldn't.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a great tip. Always review the security settings of your browser, no matter what browser you're using. And better yet, do as Darren suggests and go through and review what permissions have been given and decide if that's still necessary or not. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point. Really good.
Well, my next tip is actually a reminders tip. I guess I always used reminders incorrectly. In that I created a list for all these different things that I wanted reminders for. For example, business related things or personal related things or just various projects or maybe a vacation that's coming up or something like that. The problem for me is remembering that I have reminders in any one particular list, and that those reminders might be just as important as reminders in another. And at least the way my brain works, if I can't see those reminders at a glance, they might as well not exist. So that's great and all. And I found myself always forgetting to do things, even though I would set an alarm. I'd say, yeah, remind me later, or turn off the alarm, and then I'd forget the reminder was there and what have you. So I have found out completely by accident, I had no idea that this existed until I stumbled across it, that within any given list in the Reminders app, you can create sections. My gosh, this has been a game changer for me. Because now I have one master reminders list, And
Wow.
within that reminders list, I have sections for personal projects, for business projects, client specific
Wow.
things I need to remember, Mac stock, just all these different sections within one list so I can see at a
Wow.
glance
One list.
what needs to be done.
Yeah. Yep.
And I didn't know that this feature existed. And once I found it, it's made reminders so much more useful to me. So now how to create those sections is actually very easy. If you have the Reminders app open, in the very top right of the app window, you see the plus to add a reminder, but just to the left of that plus is an icon. And it might not be obvious at first, and that's probably why I ignored it for the longest time. But if you hover over it, it says add a new section. And when you click add a new section, that literally creates a new grouping of reminders within that list so that you can put reminders in that grouping, you can check them off, and you can keep all these different reminders handy or visible at a glance as you're looking at just one list. That really has changed the way I use reminders. And as I said, it's just made it that much more useful to me. And I do know that there are ways to say, just show me today's reminders, or just show me scheduled ones, or just show me all reminders. I know that that exists. But by having them grouped, it helps my brain remember that, yes, I need to do this thing. I don't necessarily have a deadline for it. I don't have to know that it needs to be done today at 1. So scheduling it doesn't really matter that much to me. Just the fact that it's there and it needs to be done is what matters to me. So by creating sections within one list, I can now see everything I need to do, see it at a glance, and it's made reminders very functional for me. So adding sections to a reminders list is my next tip for everyone.
That's
Very
great.
impressive.
Actually,
Well,
that section thing, don't they now do groceries, I think, like
they do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they do.
automatically add, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
they do. There's things like that, automated list. But
Yeah.
I think groceries is the only one so far. And
Yeah. I think
I don't
that's
even
it.
know, does that exist within reminders on the Mac? I know it is on the phone, but can
It
you?
does.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, it does. There's grocery
You can
categories. There you
enable it.
go.
Yep.
Yep.
and it's
No, but
also
that,
available in the Notes app as well. So you can do sections in the Notes app, which I found really useful as well.
Yeah.
oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. That was just that really just made reminders, like I said, it's just made it more useful for me because I would put reminders in lists and think I'm doing a
And
really
forget
good job
which list you
and
put it in.
and pat myself on the back and say, good job, Mike, you're keeping track of all this stuff. But then I
You're
would
doing
forget
a
that they're
great.
there and they would never get done. Now they get
Yeah.
done
Brilliant.
because I can see
Excellent.
them. I know that they're there and I actually get things done now, which is
Wow.
mind blowing.
Mind blowing.
Yes,
So
amazing.
that is a good
So,
deal.
who would like to take the next tip?
Yeah. Darren can go.
Okay. Okay.
It-
Interesting that because my next tip follows on from the concept of what of your
Oh,
tip,
cool.
Mike. Um, so the idea of using one reminders list to rule them all, I'm extending that. My tip is to extend that to email. So
Mm,
I used to do the traditional thing of having lots of email folders and diligently filing my emails into the each correct folder and so on. Now I just don't bother with that. So what I've done now is also this is prompted because many email applications. So it's not just Apple Mail, but many applications automatically know what your archive folder is, and have a feature for
yes.
just putting stuff and archiving your mail.
Yeah.
So the idea is rather than meticulously dragging every email and thread into separate folders that you create and maintain and so on. No, that's too much like hard work. So now all I do is say any email I want to keep, just archive it. So it all goes into the archive folder. So with the new abilities of search being much, much better than it used to be back in the day, you can now just search for the things you are wanting to keep as emails in your one archive folder to rule them all, rather than having to put them into all these little folders and maintain a structure and so on. Because 9 times out of 10, you'll put something in a folder and you'll forget which folder you've put it in anyway, and you'll have to search for it anyway. So you might as well use search in the one archive folder and just use that one folder for keeping your email, and don't worry about creating all these majestic mailboxes and folder lists and stuff that you're manually filing all of your emails away. You don't need to do that. Just click the archive button and you're done.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I was going to say, or automatically filing away, and then you actually can't find a message because you have a rule set up that says throw this email into this folder, and I'm like, why didn't where's this? Why did this email not show up? And it's because it's stuck in this folder off. Yeah.
So now I just archive mail I want to keep. I don't bother to file it away.
Yeah.
I do file it away. I will admit I do have a folder structure, but I typically I guess what I do is kind of a variation of what you do, in that I don't archive it. I consider the archive folder to be just a collection of where everything is, but I'll keep stuff in my inbox where I can quickly find it with a quick filter feature of Thunderbird. So I'll keep it in there until I'm done with it, and then when I'm done with it, I'll file it away.
Oh, that's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what you're talking about sounds like it could benefit from something we discussed on the show before, and that's tagging your mail. So you might not put it into folders, but you might tag it as a particular type, and then you can just select that tag and see only those types of messages.
That would make searching easier, but I find searching pretty good anyway. So so that means I've not needed to go down the tagging rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is something I've never come to grips with. I know I've mentioned this on the show before. We had a wonderful presentation at MacStock a number of years ago. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but Brett Terpstra gave a talk on using tags instead of folders on the Mac, and how he's kind of given up on the concept, and it may have changed since then, but he's kind of given up on the concept of filing everything away in folders, but instead he tags everything. He just tags everything, and then he finds stuff that way, and it really is kind of the same thing when you think about it. I mean, that's Gmail's whole thing, is that folders no longer exist in mail. You're essentially labeling, they call them labels, you're labeling your messages, and those get translated to folders if you use an email client like Apple Mail. But they're labels. They're just tags. They're just a way to organize your messages so that you can click on that tag or that label and find those related messages much more easily. So the concept is the same, but I've just never come to grips with using tags, and I know I should, because every time someone describes it to me, I think, oh my gosh, that would be a time saver. And then do I do it? No, I do not.
I do use tags quite a bit, but like you said too, it's a rabbit hole thing. I kind of do what you were talking Brett does. I tag stuff, and then I'll create like search folders, or have Spotlight on the tag, and then save it as a folder. And so even if these files are like in different folders, I'll have them all grouped together, which is a nice deal.
That's smart too.
I don't do that enough though, unfortunately. So.
Yeah. Let's see. Were you ready for your big tip, Eric? Because we have a twofer coming up next.
Okay. Yeah. Whenever. Yeah. I just slide. I can stick it in. I just didn't want to cut you guys off.
Well, I know it's the largest tip ever presented on For Mac Eyes Only that Eric is going to present us with.
I don't know if it's that.
He said it's absolutely the biggest tip ever. and it
Wow.
will
I
take
don't
at
think it's that
least 3 hours to go through it.
big. Yeah.
So before we get to that, let's do our twofer, Darren, because we realized as we set out to record today that one of your tips ties into one of mine. So I'll give my tip
Perfect.
first,
Sounds good.
and then
Yeah.
we'll follow that up with yours, Darren.
Sounds
So
good.
mine is something that I mentioned on the show before, and I said, ooh, we should talk about that as a tip in a future episode. Well, that time has
Here we
come.
are.
Yes. So this is how to take two screens on your Mac and turn them into one. Now, if you have two displays connected to your Mac, let's say one external display connected to a MacBook, or an external display connected to an iMac, or maybe you have two or three displays connected to a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio, and they are not set to mirror each other, you'll find that when you are moving a window from one display to another, that the Mac always wants to cut off that window unless you drag it completely over to the other display.
Yes.
So if
Yes.
you only
Hate
drag
that.
it partially, it gets cut off, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, at first it may seem as if there isn't really a great way to allow the window that you're dragging to straddle the two displays. And that's because they're two spaces, right? It makes
Yeah.
sense in a way that you would want that
Mm.
window to only be on one display or the other. So that's why
Oh,
Apple
so
does
that's
it that way by default. But if you have a need to make your two displays act as a single display and allow windows to sit partially on one and partially on the other, that's where this tip comes in. And the way you do that
oh,
is you open up your system settings, you click on displays in the left-hand option panel, the side panel of settings, and first make sure that your external displays or your primary displays, if they're on a desktop Mac, are set to extended. Don't set them to mirrored. If they're set to mirrored, this isn't going to work. Make sure that your second display or your tertiary display, your third display, are set to extended displays. So that's step one. Next, go to Desktop and Dock in the left-hand side of your system settings. Scroll down to Mission Control, and then in Mission Control, you'll see a setting that says Displays have separate spaces. And what you want to do is you want to uncheck that setting. In other words, it's a little slider, so turn it off. Turn off displays have separate spaces. And then the Mac will actually very helpfully tell you that you have to log out for this to take effect. So you then either need to log out of your account and sign back in, or more simply just restart your Mac. Either one of those will do it for you, but log out, restart your Mac, and after you do that, your two screens will effectively merge into one. And
wow.
the nice thing about that is that now you can drag a window from one display to the other and let it sit right in between the two displays so that part of
Yeah.
it's on one screen and part of it's on the other screen.
Yeah.
Now,
That.
are there any downfalls to this? Yes, there are downfalls to this. There's at least one that I can think of. And I don't know how much of a downfall this really is. And it's also possible that there's a workaround for this and I just couldn't find it. But the downfall that could potentially exist, if this matters to you, is that when displays have separate spaces, they each have their own menu bar and dock. But when you set them up so that the displays do not have separate spaces, the convenience of having the menu bar and dock on each display no longer works. You can, within displays, manually move your menu bar from one to the other, but it's not automatic like it is when they have separate spaces. But if the ability to spread a window across multiple displays is more important to you, then this might be the tip for you. Then, in one little tiny extra tip, and I kind of noticed this as I was playing around with it. When you do this, you're going to want to make sure that your two displays are set to a similar resolution. And
Yeah.
the reason is if
Yeah.
you don't have them
Yeah.
set to a similar resolution and you have a window that's straddling the two displays, it's going to look a little funky because on one display it's
Yeah.
going to be larger or smaller than on the other, and it's going to be a little off. So I can think of situations where you might want to do this, like maybe gaming, and you want to have the window going across two displays or something like that. That might be a case where you want to do it. Maybe if you're working at, I don't know where would you
Or
want to
even
do this? You know,
I I actually used it to when I had pictures, photos that were big enough to drag across,
there you
where I'd
go.
have it go across the few displays, and
Yeah,
I was so upset when this went away. I didn't think that you could get it back. So although I do like the separate menu bar,
I do
although
too. Yeah.
the dock thing, there is only one. The dock I think can only be on the main display. You still have a main display even
No,
in this.
if they're
Oh,
set
really?
up with separate spaces, you can get the dock on the other display by just moving your mouse cursor to the bottom, and it will
Oh
pop
yeah,
up.
you're right.
Yep.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So it'll kind of bounce up on whatever display you move the cursor down to the bottom of.
down to.
The
That's
menu
right.
bar's there on all of them, but the dock
Right.
you can get to show on one or the other. But when they're not set up as separate spaces, you can't do that. So
That's right.
yeah,
Okay. And
there's that.
there's probably not the ability to have like, three spaces on one display and four spaces on the other. It's probably like just one big. Yeah.
One big, yeah. So if you have three displays and you do this, you're going to have one big wide display. Yeah,
Display. Yeah.
yeah. Now,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
neat thing
that's
is
it. Yeah,
this ties in very, very nicely to a tip that you had, Darren, when you have well, actually, this would work in either scenario, but it works well with my tip.
yeah,
So why don't you take it away?
yeah. Cool. Yeah, this does work in your scenario as well when you have multiple physical displays. My tip was for several virtual displays, but the concept is exactly the same, and what you would do is exactly the same. So because there's so many options with how you can set up displays, Apple doesn't have the default that Windows does, or just happen to pick Windows as a random operating system as an example, whereby you can choose a super wide wallpaper and have it stretch across all of your displays, whether they're physical displays or virtual displays. So
Yeah.
that option doesn't really exist, because I can understand why. It's not a downside to Mac OS. It's just there are so many options in how you can configure your displays that things would get rather confusing if that was just a default. Whereas Windows is very limited. It doesn't really let you do much in the way of virtual desktops. You sort of have a pretend virtual desktop type situation there, but it's a bit janky. It's not very nice. So they
Well,
can
it is
have.
Windows.
Oh, there
Yeah.
you go. So they have the default of letting you span across your screens.
Yeah.
So in order to do the same thing on the Mac, my tip is a website. It's a nice free little website, an online tool, which lets you split images. So the idea is you can download, and there are quite a few of these available to search for and find on the interwebs. They're usually 3 and 4 display wallpapers, like super wide, really, really wide wallpapers for multiple displays, usually for PCs. But you can download those and use them on the Mac. But in order to use them on your multiple displays, especially when you're doing what Mike suggested and tying two displays together, you would probably want a nice wallpaper to span from your one display to the other display and join together. So in that case, you would use this image splitting tool, download a lovely wallpaper for 2 displays or 3 displays, or even maybe 4 if you get a really, really super wide one, which are quite difficult to find, but you can find them. And then you use the image splitter tool to split them up into multiples for the number of displays you have. So say you have 3 displays, use the image splitter tool, drag in the lovely wide wallpaper you downloaded, click on make me three wallpapers to cover, and then you assign each wallpaper to each desktop, physical desktop or virtual desktop, and they'll beautifully flow from one monitor to the other, and you'll have a superb looking macOS desktop with a single background. and it looks absolutely wonderful. So yes, it's just a simple website. We can drop that in the show notes for people to have a play with. It's very simple to use. You just drop your image on, say how many images you want to split that up into, and one click later, and you've got your individual wallpapers to apply.
That
cool.
is awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I love when these little single purpose websites like that, where you can just
Yeah.
get a simple thing done and not have to worry too much about it. Of course, the manual way to do this, if you want to approach this from a simple mathematical standpoint, if you have 3 displays and they're all 1920 by 1080 HD displays, and you're trying to create this image yourself, you're going to be creating an image in Affinity Photo or what have you that's 5760 by 1080. And then, of course, you can manually split it into 3 images and all that. But for the effort and time you put into doing that, if you can visit this one website, one website to take this large image you've downloaded elsewhere and plop it in there. And the reason you're doing this, again, just to reemphasize what you said earlier, Darren, the reason you're doing this is because the Mac can't natively take a wide image and spread it across 2 displays. You have to create 2. You're creating 2 wallpapers is what you're doing.
That's it.
One for
it
left
doesn't allow
and
you
one
to
for
do
right.
that by default. Yeah, that's right. It doesn't let you do that by default because if it did, and you choose the wrong selection of view variants that you could combine into an odd situation, it just wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't work. It would be very strange.
Yeah.
So,
And I will admit that when I was playing around with the separate spaces feature of Mission Desktop and Dock on the Mac to play around with this and see how that worked with dragging a window between 2 displays and things like that, the very first time I disabled displays of separate spaces, both screens went to the same wallpaper. And I had them set to different wallpapers. And I thought, that might be a downfall.
Yes, there you go.
That might be a downfall.
Yeah.
But it turns out that even when you have displays not set to be separate spaces, it will do that to you. It'll change them both over to the same wallpaper, but you can go into your wallpaper settings and still
set them back again. Yeah,
and set it back again. So if you try it and you see the wallpaper change, don't worry, you can still go into your wallpaper setting and switch it back again. So
that's
there
it.
you go.
Don't panic.
Don't panic.
Those are some awesome tips. And my tip isn't that good. I think we should just keep going with yours.
Well, I tell you what, I have 2 more tips. How many more tips do you have, Darren?
Oh dear, I think I might have run out. So I think Eric's tip is definitely required, definitely now.
Okay, then here's what we will do. I will do my next tip, then we'll do Eric's marathon tip, and then we'll wrap up with my last tip. How about that?
Or you could just do your 2 tips, and I'll do my marathon tip at the end. And then if you decide you want to cut it out, it'll just be easier to edit out. It just you'll be able to cut that out.
Well, I don't know about that. I tell you what, we'll go with this plan. Hey, Brian, nice to see you in the chat room. Have a safe flight. Have a safe flight. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go with my next tip. I feel like I've done all these already because I did. This is the second time I've gone through these today. All right. Back to the show. My next tip actually has to do with the Notes app and its ability to store PDFs within a note. Now,
yes, killer feature.
In versions of Mac OS prior to Sonoma, and this change I'm about to talk about happened with Sonoma. In versions prior to Sonoma, if you added a PDF to a note, it would just show up as an icon within the note. And worse, you couldn't really see any more than the first page of the PDF. It would just be this embedded thing within the note. So to read it all, you would actually have to open it from the note. You'd have to export it or open it in preview or do something to be able to see the full contents of that PDF. But with Sonoma, and of course Sequoia, with Sonoma, Apple made a few usability tweaks that make it so much easier to embed an entire small library of PDFs within a single note and to easily browse the content of each PDF. And here's how you do that. Let's say you'd like to create that single note that contains a small library of related PDFs, maybe tech documents or just something that you like to keep together, and you like to have them handy in the Notes app. First step, of course, is to create a new note or to open an existing note and then to drag those PDFs into that note. Now, you can do this one at a time, or you can select a bunch and drag them all in at once. And what you'll notice immediately is that Notes now automatically generates a thumbnail for each page of the PDF. And it allows you to quickly scroll through those pages right from within your note. So you might have it up right in front of me right now. There's a PDF embedded in a note, and I can just scroll to the right and go from page to page to page of that PDF. And if I scroll down further in the note, I'll get to the next note, and I can scroll through the pages of that one. That's pretty neat.
That's cool.
It's wonderful.
Really
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that you might notice, and this is super helpful for longer PDFs, is that there's a small link at the top of each of the PDFs embedded within your note. So at the top of each PDF is the title of the PDF, a little menu arrow, and then on the far right, there's a link that says Show Thumbnails. Now, when you click Show Thumbnails, a handy dandy little strip of thumbnails from all the pages appears above the larger thumbnails. Now, this is handy if the document that you've embedded is super, super long, and now you can show thumbnails and just quickly scroll through all these little teeny tiny thumbnails to get to the one that you want in the larger ones. So that's pretty neat too. Now, all of these PDFs are stored within the note, kind of stacked on top of each other. So if you drag 2 into a note, there'll be one above the other. If you drag 10 in, one above the other, above the other, above the other, all the way down. But if you would like a quick overview of all the documents stored within that note, what you can do is click that little down arrow next to the title of each PDF. And when you click that, there is an option that says View as Small. There's also View as Medium and View as Large. But View as Small shrinks it all up into a little gray box that just shows the title, the size, and the first page thumbnail. And you can do that with each of the PDFs embedded in the note and just get a quick little overview of all of them. Or for the note in general, you can go to Notes View menu, Attachment View, Set All to Small. That's the other way to do it. And then on a per PDF basis, you can click it and say View as Medium or View as Large. I actually find View as Medium works really, really well because it's not too big, not too small. It allows me to browse through the pages and still get to the contents of the PDF without having to open it. Now, if you do want to open it, 2 final little quick tips here is that you can use Quick Look. So with the PDF selected within the note, just hit the spacebar, it'll open up in Quick Look, which is great. Or you can double click it and it'll open in preview. So that is a super cool feature of Notes. It can, of course, if you go crazy, it can create these, overly bloated notes with all these PDFs embedded in them. But it is kind of a neat way to, let's say receipts or invoices or, various parts of a project can all be kept together in a note, and you can still get to and see the contents of those attachments without needing to go through any major hassle. So I kind of like that feature. I did find,
Yeah.
however, I was going to make a joke and I was going to say, hey, if you want to collect all the old for Mac OS Only tip sheets from 2007, 2008 into a single note, there are 21 of them.
Yeah.
And I downloaded a few and I brought them into Notes, and I could not make them work properly. They only embedded small. I could not get them to show the pages of the PDFs, even though there are multiple. So there may be instances where older PDFs created prior to a certain time frame, and I don't know what that time frame is, don't work properly with this feature. Even if I opened up those PDFs and I saved them back out again, I could not get them to embed this way within a note. And I don't
Oh,
know,
that's
I
interesting.
don't know why it is,
Hmm.
but these are PDFs
Hmm.
that I created way back in 2007 and 2008. They were called the tip sheets for Mac OS Only tip sheets. And, you know, if you want to learn how to use box.net instead of .mac, you might want to go back through the archives and find these. But otherwise, probably not worth going back to. But for whatever reason, I couldn't get them to embed properly. So you might have issues with some PDFs, but all the others that I tested worked fine with it. So that is my next tip, embedding PDFs within a note in Apple Notes. So
Brilliant.
there you
That
go.
is really slick, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually checking it out. I was actually looking at PDFs in my notes. Now I don't know how I missed that. And even just the show thumbnails is really nice.
Is really nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is a
Yeah. The way they
huge,
present it is really good, isn't it?
huge usability
Yeah.
I just
improvement in Notes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've recently decided, because I currently keep my my manuals in PDF form,
Oh, yeah.
but they're in different places. So funny you should say this about this notes tip for PDFs. It's the perfect place to put your manuals. So that's one of my projects, is to put my manuals into Notes, so that I can find them much more easily, but keep them in the PDF form that's searchable and so on. So brilliant. Yeah, I'll be doing that.
Yeah.
Well,
Very brilliant.
now that you've said that, Darren, I'm going to uh, mention a little companion tip to this one. And that is how I actually store my PDFs, like manuals and the old for Mac OS Only tip sheets. I store them in Apple Books. I do not store them in
Oh yes, I
Notes.
used to do that. Yeah.
I
That's
bring
what I
them
do
all
now.
into the Apple Books app. I create groupings of that. What do they call it? Categories, or what do they call it in Apple
Yeah,
Books? I don't
that's
know what
it.
they
Yeah,
call
I
it.
think it is
Yeah,
categories. Yeah,
so
yeah.
I have one called service manuals. I have one called, for Mac
Oh,
OS Only
that's
tip
good.
sheets and stuff like that. And when you
And it is
import
nice.
them, into Apple Books, they do sync to all your other devices, which is
They do.
amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you do specifically have to tell Apple Books to sync PDFs, otherwise it won't. But as long as you tell it to sync your PDFs and you store them in Apple Books, they will be on all of your devices. And so Apple Books is more useful than some people might
Yeah.
think, especially if
It's
you're
not just there for reading books.
not just there for reading
Yeah.
books. Yeah, it's a great
You can
a
do
great
do
tool
stuff with
for
it.
storing collections of documentation. And it does make it easy to read too.
Yeah.
Not quite as easy to get the
Yeah.
content back out of it again, although it's a simple drag and drop. But with Notes, I kind of like that idea of keeping the manuals and everything
Yeah.
within the Notes app, because it's kind of where we are all the time anyway.
Yeah, it's more accessible in a way.
A little bit more
Although
accessible.
Apple Books
Yeah.
does present things really nicely, so there's that as well. But
So
yeah.
that's just a little side tip to go along with the Notes tip. If you're looking for a
Cool.
different way to store your PDFs, Apple Books might be a good way to do it.
Cool.
Yeah. Both are really cool. I have mine in something called Goodreader, which is on
Oh yeah.
other it's on the iPhone and stuff like that. And I think the Mac too, but I'm not sure. I think I will just move it to Apple Books. It's a great idea.
Yeah. So, Eric, I guess the good news is that brings us to your tip.
That's the good news right there. That's the great news. It's fine. Okay, so this tip, and the reason why I said it may be a little long, I guess it can be as long or as short as we want it, but has to do with shortcuts. And the way that it came about, I'm always kind of a big proponent of shortcuts.
Absolutely.
But the way that it came about is we had to come up with something to log medications for somebody in the household that was taking them, and it kind of got to be. It actually started out in notes, and it kind of got to be overwhelming for that. It just part of it was to keep track of, did somebody take this? When did they take it? When do we take the next one? That sort of thing. And so notes kind of, even though there's a nice way to collaborate and stuff, I ended up moving it to a spreadsheet, and I use numbers because numbers is a nice. Excel is obviously more feature rich, and it's probably my favorite Microsoft app. But
Wow.
numbers is it is actually I've used it a lot anyway. But numbers, even though it's not as powerful as Excel, it displays things really nicely, and
Yeah.
it actually, it's almost like Apple thought, we have the chance to kind of do this over again. So they really broke it up nicely into tables instead of having this
Mm.
endless grid that
Yeah,
Excel still
definitely.
does. Even though Excel does use tables now too, or maybe always has. I can't remember. I don't think they did though. It's still not as slick as numbers, and of course, it's easy to collaborate with that as well. But ultimately, what it ended up where shortcuts came in is to make it easier to enter stuff and not always have to type everything out. Even though I did kind of set it up with a pop-up menu instead of numbers, or when something would get added, it would be kind of tough to now add that in the numbers spreadsheet and keep the formulas and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So I ended up creating a shortcut to do that stuff, and then ultimately it's kind of several shortcuts, but I use data jar to store the medications in, and then I have a shortcut
Ah,
that that basically reads that. So when you want to log something, it'll go out to data jar, pull up a list of everything, and then you could just check what you want to log, and then it'll write it out to the spreadsheet, and it ultimately keeps for a lot of the medications, like when you can take the next dose, or maybe when you have to. And in the case of when you have to, it also sticks out a reminder in the reminders app, so
Mm.
the person will get a
oh,
reminder
clever.
too. And it ultimately too, when it does that, it'll delete the previous reminder because we were having trouble with reminders building up and people actually not clicking. They remember to take it, but not actually mark the reminder as
You
done.
should have
So
used sections. You should have used sections of
yeah,
reminder there.
I should have respected. Yeah, exactly. So it does that, and then when I have a different shortcut to add a new med, and I will use that to add anything new or remove stuff or update things. But it seems to work really well. The one issue probably with it is it's not an easy thing to share with other people just because
Mm,
there's a bunch of different components. There's data jar, which is free, but it's another download, and then it also uses some other apps called Actions and Toolbox Pro, which enhance what you can do in shortcuts.
wow.
So the person would need to have that as well, but it has made things a lot easier to deal with and a lot easier to keep track of. And I suppose you could write it out to anywhere. It wouldn't have to be a number spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet's really good for that sort of data. I mean, it just
Oh, yeah.
because
Yeah, it makes
it's made
sense.
to house a lot of stuff and keep everything. So, and like I said, iCloud with numbers and with actually even pages and stuff like that, the collaboration works really well. I mean, it
Mm.
syncs up. You know, we've never gotten a conflict, or any sort of thing where
Yeah.
it hasn't. It just takes sometimes a second if the last person logged something and now you're going to log something, it'll take a second or two to kind of write over to yours. So I built in a little bit of delay when I'm logging something to kind of wait for that to happen. But otherwise, it works really well.
Wow, that's pretty good. And I think we talked about this on one of our shortcuts episodes. I think you talked about
Yeah.
data jar then. And
Yes.
then
Yeah.
the other tool is called Actions, right? That's the other one that you use?
Yeah. Actions and another one called Toolbox Pro. They're very
Toolbox, that was it.
similar,
Yeah.
but they have different capabilities and stuff like that. So, but they really, actually, all three of those apps make shortcuts really usable. I mean, it's data jar is great
More
for
powerful, yeah.
holding stuff. Yeah, they're a lot more powerful, and so I'm glad to see that it's got that kind of support. But I'm a person that I do use shortcuts a lot for different things, just to make things easier, and it's something that can run on iOS as well as the Mac, which there's a lot of stuff. There's good automation tools for the Mac that are awesome, but they don't carry over to the iPhone or the iPad. iPad is easy, so this is one of those things that does. So it works well.
Yeah. Yeah. So two things real quick about this. I
Yeah,
don't want to go too far down the rat hole of
yeah.
shortcuts because we can spend an entire episode about this. But
hmm
um, the first thing is the use of Actions and Toolbox Pro,
Toolbox
and
Pro, yeah,
some of these third-party tools that you might have to download and install on your Mac to get the most out of shortcuts are
yeah,
very important, because some of the shortcuts that I've wanted to create in the past, there would be a built-in tool like a preview component that I could stick in there, but it never worked right. And then it would turn out that I would use a similarly named component from, let's say, Pixelmator, and
yeah,
it worked perfectly. And so now I just have to make sure the Pixelmator is installed on all of my Macs, which it is. Pixelmator Pro is
yeah,
on all of them.
yeah.
But you just have to make sure that this third-party app is installed to get the most and the best, I guess I should say, the best
Right,
functionality out of shortcuts, because
right.
some of those built-in tools are fine and they work to a certain degree, but it's really when you start incorporating the third-party uh, actions that you get the most functionality out of it. So that's one.
Yeah, yep,
Two, now you extolled the virtues of Excel and how much you like Excel and stuff like that,
yeah.
but you ended up with numbers. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize there that if you're working with shortcuts, shortcuts don't really talk very well to Excel, do they? Or can you make that work?
Yeah, you probably could with some work make it work, but no. Yeah, that's as far as I know, Microsoft doesn't have anything. It doesn't support shortcuts.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they don't actually. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
that and it's funny because I started out using numbers without the shortcuts, and so it kind of just organically kind of built into this thing. And so I didn't really think of it like that because I chose numbers
But yeah.
first. And
Uh,
yeah, you're
I
right.
think
Though.
I think
Yeah,
numbers is the best choice anyway, but I think you can sort of control Excel with shortcuts, but you have to have a conduit there. So I
Hmm.
think you'd have to
yeah,
get a shortcut to run an Apple script, and then run an Apple script to do a thing in Excel, and then back to Apple script, back to the shortcut again. So it's a little bit convoluted.
yeah.
I would
That's
have
exactly what you
chosen
have to do.
I would have chosen numbers anyway because I just prefer it, especially
Yeah,
as you say, with all the tables on one screen that you
Uh,
are much easier to navigate and use than Excel's implementation of that.
yep,
But yeah,
yeah,
I think you can do it, but you'd have to jump through a few hoops.
yeah. I
Numbers,
just see
numbers is
what
a
they've got.
sleeper. That's a sleeper
It
app.
is
You,
it
you
is a
don't
sleeper.
you don't realize how powerful it is until you start working with it and realize
Yeah,
all the
start
hidden
using
little
it and you think,
features
oh
that
wow,
simply don't exist in Excel.
Yeah. And they've added pivot tables. That was a big thing
Yeah.
that people were like, well, it
hey,
doesn't
pivot
have that.
tables.
Yeah, and actually, I use it for this too, and it does. It works pretty slick. But you're right. Numbers is a sleeper. It's actually that might be a tip right there. Use numbers. You know,
There's
it's
a tip.
just
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Numbers exist.
yeah, numbers exist, and it's
So,
free. Again, that it's one of those things. I suppose it may not be installed on your Mac or not. You might have to download it, but it's part of the iWork collection,
yeah,
so
yep,
it is free.
yep.
Yeah.
So, no more tips from you, Darren? That's it? You're done?
I sort of have one very, very tiny one, but it's probably a bit silly, really. All it
We
is
like
is
silly
not.
here.
Well, all it is not to do something.
Okay.
So, especially if you're new to the Mac, you may think you specifically need to
Oh,
download Adobe Acrobat, but you don't.
Yeah.
Just to
Yeah.
mention that all you need is Preview. Preview is there.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful do it all app. We've covered it quite extensively in previous show,
yeah.
but Preview is a wonderful app.
It is.
Don't bother downloading Adobe Acrobat; it will just cause you needless pain and sorrow.
And
So
suffering.
just leave it just leave it alone and
Yeah.
don't bother downloading it.
Uh, well, Preview is another one of those sleeper apps. Now,
Yeah.
admittedly, it's only in recent years that it's become quite capable of replacing some of the pro apps that are out there. Uh,
Right.
and there was a pro PDF app on the Mac that doesn't exist anymore because it got bought out and changed over, and that's PDF Pen Pro. It was an excellent app, and I subscribed or not. I didn't subscribe to it. I upgraded the license every year, but that was a fantastic app, and it's kind of now it still works, but it's dead in the water. It hasn't been developed
Yeah,
in ages, and if you want to use their current product now that they've been bought out, you have to get what is it called, Nitro PDF Pro, and it's
Nitro.
really expensive. And quite frankly, for the most part, not all parts, but for the most part, Preview is an excellent stand-in for PDF
Yeah.
Pen Pro now. And it was not before, but now it is. And
yeah,
there's so much buried in that little tiny toolbar in the top of Preview that does not jump up and scream and shout in your face and say, look at all this cool stuff I can do. You kind
Yeah.
of have to discover to be told that it's there. And then you're like, wow, why wasn't I using this before? So
Yeah.
there you
yeah,
go.
Preview is that's a great tip. Don't feel like you have to jump into installing all these third-party apps that you might be used to using on a different platform. Try what's built into the Mac first. Yeah, that's an excellent
Especially
tip.
Acrobat.
Exactly.
Especially
Especially
Acrobat.
Acrobat.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Well then, you don't have any more, right, Eric?
No. Nope.
Okay.
That was
Then
it.
I have one more tip I'm going to share. This is something I'm embarrassed to say. Um, I was shocked to learn this feature existed on the Mac, and worse, that it had been there for years before I heard about it. And
Oh no.
I really only heard about this within the last 6 months or so. I was watching a
Wow.
video on YouTube. They were talking about how they create thumbnails for YouTube videos, and they mentioned this tip, and I went, "What?" I'm sure I've seen this item within the Finder over and over again. It just never clicked with me what it was and how useful it could be. But did you know, and you're both going to say, yeah, we knew that, Mike, but did you
Yeah.
know that you can take pretty much any file on your Mac and turn it into a template that you can use over and over and over again? I mean, there's templating features in Word and Pages and Numbers
Yeah.
and all that. Those features exist, but
Stationary.
you can do this right from the Finder. So, for example, in the case of this video that I was watching, they were creating thumbnails over and over again, and they always had the same format to this thumbnail. So, the way you create a template out of that file that you want to use over and over And in this case, it was Affinity Photo, and which is great because that's what I use. Or maybe you have an existing text document that you open and text edit all the time, and you make changes to it, but you don't necessarily want to overwrite the original, and you forget to
Yeah.
duplicate the file first, which is what I always do. And then I'm partway
Duplicate
through it,
first.
and I went, "Oh my gosh, I just overwrote my original template."
Oh no.
Which
Also
you can
say,
do, right? You can right click a file
Yeah.
and duplicate it, but
Right.
instead
yeah.
you can let the Mac do it for you. And here's how you do it. From within the
Wow.
Finder,
Oh,
you locate and select any file that you would like to turn into a template. And we'll just stick with an
oh,
Affinity Photo
I gotta
file.
try this now. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
right click that file, and select Get Info from the context menu, or you can press Command I, either one of those. That'll open up the
And
Get Info
yeah.
window. And
Yeah.
then when
Yep.
when the info window appears, you're going to see a spot in the top with the general section, within the general section, that shows two checkboxes. And one of those is labeled Stationery Pad. Now,
Stationery pad.
it's not
Yeah.
obvious. Apple should call
No.
this something like Make Template, but instead they
Yeah.
call it Stationery Pad.
Yeah.
Check the box for Stationery Pad
Wow.
and then close the info window. That's it. That's all you have to do. Just get info, check the box for Stationery Pad, and
Yep.
close the Get Info window. From now on, when you double click that file to open it, the Finder will automatically create a duplicate. It will place that copy within the same folder as the original, and of course, it'll
Wow.
append the word copy to the file name. But that copy
Oh.
allows you to work on the file without worrying about the original and without worrying about destroying the original, and
Oh,
then you can just
that's
rename it
brilliant.
later. Now, how slick is
Yeah.
that? Now, of course,
That is amazing.
there are downfalls, and one of them is that not every file type seems to honor the stationary pad option. Most of them do, and most of those that I tried do. But for those that don't, well, you can just always do it the old-fashioned way, and that's right-click, create a
Yeah.
duplicate, and work off of that. But if you have a template file, you just double-click it. The Finder creates the duplicate for you, opens it up automatically. You make your changes and then save it out, and you're all done. So that is my last tip:
Wow.
is how to turn any file on your Mac into a template using the
Wow.
stationary pad feature from the Get Info window.
That
And
is the
there's
best
something.
tip ever.
Yeah. I thought it worked with everything. I've not run into something that it hasn't.
I'll tell you what it did not work on is an Omni Outliner file. That did not work.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Now,
Yeah, that's
admittedly, I'm not on the latest and greatest version of Omni Outliner, but it's not that old. I'm on a fairly recent version. But when I tried
yeah.
it on an Omni Outliner file, it didn't work. But it worked perfectly with Affinity Photo, Excel,
Yeah.
Affinity Designer, text documents. It's great. And
It is.
in the example that where I learned about this, where you're creating a thumbnail over and over and over again for a show that you produce
Perfect.
on
Yeah.
YouTube, it's perfect. You open up this template or stationary pad file, you open that up, make the changes, save it out as your new thumbnail, and then the next time you need it, you just go back to that stationary pad file. It's fantastic. How I
It's
did not know
fantastic.
it was there on the Mac,
I was
who
going to say the
knows?
same.
But
How
And
on
that's
earth did I not know that?
yeah,
that's actually been there since the days of yore too. That's been there probably
uh,
since System 7.
that
It's
is that's why I'm
God, so
embarrassed,
yes.
Eric, because I learned it's been there for like 30 years plus,
Wow.
and I had no idea. No idea.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's an awesome tip though. That's
So
that's a great and you're right too. What a place to hide it. I mean it's like you have a
and what a
little
thing to call it.
box.
I don't,
I know.
what does it mean, stationary pad? What a name.
I know.
I'm not even sure what that means, but
I don't
What does
either.
that mean? Yeah, so a pad for your stationary. I
when I
don't
was
know.
researching this and trying to find out a little bit more detail about it after I learned about it,
Uh,
I saw someone mention that very thing. Why did they not call it Make Template? Why did they
Yeah.
not call it that? I
that
mean,
would have
what?
made
Well,
some sense.
I don't
I
know.
can tell you why. Because I think why did they call get info? I mean, now again, I don't want to
Yeah,
say
yeah.
Windows, but
Well, at least you're
properties,
getting
it's
info about the file.
well,
At
yeah,
least
it
it
is.
kind of makes sense.
It does. It sounds. I always kind of thought that like programmers came up with these names, like oh, get info. You know,
Yeah,
like it
yeah,
sounds like a getter and setter in a programming language, and it just or there's a lot of things that then when Microsoft had to do the same thing and come up with a different name instead of alias, they called it a shortcut. Now, in that case, an alias is what it is,
right.
but a shortcut is what it does, and it kind of seems a little bit more intuitive. And so probably the same people
Yeah,
that
yeah.
named all those, name stationary pad. I don't even know what a stationary pad is. Just something place where you kind of keep notes. I mean,
Yep.
it doesn't make you think of like duplicate, like carbon copy or something would have been. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. Carbon
Yeah,
Yeah.
paper. Call it carbon paper. Carbon pad.
yeah,
Carbon. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know.
something.
Or even duplicate to match the other duplicate function as well.
Right.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
something.
there you go. It's called
Yeah.
stationary
Wow,
pad,
it's
and
it's brilliant.
it's incredibly
Yeah.
brilliant. It's incredibly functional, and I'm going to be using it all the time, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to embrace the stationary pad.
Now that I know about it, I should say. So, with that said, if you have a favorite tip that helps you do things faster or better on the Mac and you want to share it with others, drop me a line or leave a comment in the show notes for this episode to share your favorite tips, and we will put them here on the show. And that brings us up to our essential app for the episode. We've been presenting a new essential app every episode for about a year now, and it's been a lot of great fun. And I've discovered a lot of new apps myself in doing this segment. And I believe this episode we've got a new essential app from Darren. Darren, what's your essential app this episode?
Excellent. Yeah. I was researching how to uninstall apps, and I came across a couple of different apps that can do nice uninstall functions. And I should say, when I say uninstall, it's not just removing the app from your applications folder. There's often lots of other bits and pieces left over, lurking around in application support folders and other places. So when you want to fully uninstall an app and all of its components, you sort of need a third-party app to let you do that more easily. You can do it manually yourself, but it is a bit of a faff to do. So I tried a couple of apps, and one of the ones that came very, very highly recommended, I agree, is the best one, I think, and it's called Pearcleaner. So it's a way for you to clean your pears. So
Why not?
uh,
Why
pe-
not?
why not?
Yeah.
Why not indeed? So yeah, but one of the good things about Pearcleaner is it shows you all the apps that you have already installed. Um, but it's very, very nicely laid out as well. So every app you click on, before you decide to do anything with it, it will list very, very quickly all the components that go with that app. So when you go to choose to uninstall, if you want to, you know exactly what's going to be taken away from your system before you click the button, which is important to not be taken by surprise by things being removed that you don't expect to be removed. So it's just a very, very nicely presented app uninstaller. So my essential app choice is Pearcleaner.
Okay, yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
a great choice.
Yeah. It's a really good choice. That's I since I already have Hazel installed and doing other stuff, I just use the built-in trash thing for that, which I've really liked. But I kind of
Mm.
it would be nice to see what stuff is out there before you actually delete something or drag it to the trash.
Yeah, yeah. It presents things very nicely.
I I I see that Pearcleaner is a free open source app. It's on GitHub,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
many of the recent apps that we've mentioned here have been open source apps, and this is no different. And I'm interested to read in the notes for Pearcleaner that it is inspired by the app that I use, which is App Cleaner.
App Cleaner,
App
yes, that was the
Cleaner
other
is
one.
Yeah.
That's
the
it.
one that I use. Also a free app, but I'm not sure if it's open source or not. But App Cleaner is from Free Macsoft, and they make fantastic apps, and App Cleaner is one of them.
Yep. Yep.
And
I heard of that
so I
one.
was interested to see that it's inspired, but I'm going to have to give Pearcleaner a try because it's not something that I've come across before, and I'm really interested to see how it works better or differently than App Cleaner.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
It's quite as you say, it's inspired by App Cleaner, and it works in a similar way. Things are just presented nicer, and it's very, very quick as well. So when you click on app resources, it goes off and finds them. Well, it seems to be instant. You click the button and the list is there. So
Yeah.
it's very, very nice to use. So it's one of those things. They both work well. App Cleaner does work really well as Pearcleaner. But when you're comparing the two, I think Pearcleaner just about tips the balance
nudges it out a bit,
into
huh?
favor. That's it. Just nudges it out exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
the neat thing
interesting.
about open source apps like this, Pearcleaner is no exception, is you can see the development cycle of it. So when you visit their website, which we'll link to in the show
Yeah.
notes,
That's
but when you
it.
visit their GitHub page, you can see that it was last
Yeah.
updated and last released 2 weeks ago with 4.3.0,
Exactly. Yes.
which is
It's just
Frequently
nice.
updated.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And with many commercial apps, and I guess I would call App Cleaner a commercial app, even though it's free. With many commercial apps, you either have to dig into the changelog and hope that they put a date in it, or
Yeah.
not know at all because they often don't include a changelog. So, and I don't know. I don't know what the case of FreeMacSoft and App Cleaner what their policies are because I've never sought it out. But that's something neat about open source apps is that you can really see what's gone into developing it, what
Yeah.
complications they've come across, what bugs they've come across, how they've
Yeah.
approached those,
Yeah.
have the bugs been fixed. You can almost research ahead of time if you're running into a problem with it. Are other people having this problem and has it been fixed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if an app like that has been well maintained for a large number of years, that's your green flag. That shows you it's a really, really good app. Has
Good
it been
point.
well maintained, and has it been maintained for a long time? If the answer to those two is yes, then that's an extremely good app to
Yeah.
choose.
Yeah.
Yep. Good point. Good point. Well, that's a fantastic choice for this week. Pearcleaner and a little bit long URL. I'm not going to read it off right here. Well, no, I'll read it off. It's github.com/alienator88/Pearcleaner. And that URL, of course, comes from the developer's handle, Alienator88, right? That would be
I
their
think they
handle.
have a friendly website I think they have a friendly website as well.
Oh, do
I'm
they?
not sure.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I think so, but I can't remember where I got it from now.
Well, I will link to because I can't seem to find the actual website. I will link to the GitHub page because everything you need to know about it is right there, including a
That's
link
true.
to
Yeah.
download it. So great tool.
And that is the latest, yeah.
App cleaning software. I really believe everybody needs one of these. Yes,
Yeah.
the Mac makes it easy. You can drag and drop an app to the trash and it's gone. You can drag it out of a disk image file and it's installed. That's all fantastic. But what never happens, and I wish would happen, is when you drag a file to the trash, the Mac should say, oh, by the way, all these things are somehow related to this.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you want to delete these as
It
well?
would be nice, wouldn't it?
And that's what App Cleaner and Pearcleaner and the one I used to use, App Zapper, before it
Yeah.
kind of slowed in development. App Zapper, I used all of those. And there are, as Eric mentioned, myriad apps to do this sort of thing. And you just need one on your Mac because you're going to use it over and over and over
Oh,
again.
yeah, it's extremely
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah.
It would be good for Apple to include that in the operating system.
Yeah. It really would be.
Possibly another tip is to mention that there's a special Apple website called Feedback. So if we come across things like that we would like, oh, wouldn't that be good to add to macOS? You can go to Apple's Feedback webpage and give them some feedback about apps to say, could we have a feature request? And there's a drop-down menu where you can choose feature request. So you can request things like that. So the more people that do request something like a built-in a clean app uninstaller, the more likely Apple may actually add that to the next version of macOS if enough people ask for it.
Or buy a developer who's already making one and then bring it into
or
macOS.
That too.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
No, kidding aside, Apple does listen to that feedback. They do.
They're quite responsive. Yeah.
Even if it doesn't seem as if they're listening to you, they're listening and they're taking it all in. Some people, like to joke that on the other end of that feedback page is just a trash can. But no, the truth is they really do read them. They might not get to them all the way. They might never implement your ideas. But as Darren rightly pointed out, the more people who ask for these types of features, the more people who complain about new features that don't work the way that we expect them to work, see the Photos app in iOS 18, then Apple listens and Apple makes changes and they'll dig in their heels on some elements and they'll relent on others. But ultimately, I like to think that the feedback forum on Apple's site is why we have the ports back on the MacBook Pros. I like to think that that's why we have the expansion capabilities that we have that we were missing for so long, because Apple listened and heard people say, this is what we want. Why aren't you giving it to us when other manufacturers are? So I really do think that they listen to that sort of thing. And it's, if you have something that's particularly important to you, you should absolutely use that form and send your feedback back to Apple. For sure. Definitely.
Sure.
Yep. Great tip. Yep. And with that said, that is going to do it for this episode of For Mac Guys Only. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, I do love to get your letters, so if you have any comments about the show, a tip to share, a software or hardware problem with your Mac, or maybe there are some tips that you would like to share with the For Mac Guys Only listening audience, be sure to leave your favorites in the comments of this week's show notes found at formacguysonly.com, or drop me a line, mike@formacguysonly.com. Do be sure to subscribe to the show's YouTube channel at youtube.com/FMEOTV. Click that little notification bell so that you can find out when we're going live. You can join the chat room and catch all the behind the scenes stuff that doesn't make the final cut of the show. And in this new slide that I'm throwing up there, you can now see that we are on Mastodon and Blue Sky. So if you'd like to follow us there, you can follow For Mac Guys Only at tooting.ninja/@ForMacGuysOnly or formacguysonly.bsky.social. Eric and Darren. Eric, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Eric at formacguysonly.com.
And Darren, I suspect it's similar.
And I suspect it's very similar. Yes, I suspect it's Darren at For Mac Guys Only.
Awesome.
No, so it's not Eric it's Darren. It's not similar.
That's true.
That's right.
Very true. That's quite different.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Eric and Darren for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Cheerio.